Hey, this is Nick Milavoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarist podcast, where each week we're talking about one of the 100 guitar players that we think you should know. This week we're talking about Chet Atkins.
That's right. One of the all-time, I think, like if there was a very, very short list of guitar players you need to know, need to be aware of, need to gain something from them no matter what style you play in, I think Chet is on a very short list.
Yes.
If there's one country guitar player you need to know, if there's literally one country guitar player, I think it's Chet Atkins.
I would absolutely agree with that. I would say that his playing, goes beyond genre, goes beyond style, and it's just like necessary to the fundamentals of how the electric guitar works, how the electric guitar, like the history of the instrument and how you should approach it in any way. Oh my gosh, we have so much to say. I'm so excited. But first, we got to remind you that you can get at us. You can reach out to us. Send us an email at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com. You can leave a voicemail or send us a text to 319-423-9734. Give us what you got. Anything you want to share. Our ears and eyes are open. And while you're at it, please, if you're watching on YouTube, like this video and subscribe to Premier Guitar's YouTube channel. And if you're over on one of your favorite podcast apps, please give us a rating.
Drop us a little follow. Drop us a little subscribe.
Yeah, subscribe. Review the podcast. We really love that.
Dig it. All right. So today's episode is brought to you by LR Bags. Yeah, LR Bags. You might know them for pickups, but they also make a guitar, which Nick is going to talk about here in a second. But first, I'm going to talk about their line of Align series pedals, which are created specifically for acoustics. They integrate studio processing tools, a high-fidelity preamp, foundational tone-shaping EQ, reverb, active DI. The highly versatile series expands your tonal palette with a vast range of control that's uniquely tailored to complement and enrich the voice of your acoustic instruments. They have reverb, delay, chorus, DI, equalizer, compressor, EQ. All the major food groups for acoustic effects are there. So we want you to go over lrbags.com, check out the new Align series pedals.
That's right. And, LR Bags is so closely associated with pickups. You're talking about pedals. What a lot of people don't know is that Lloyd Baggs began his journey as a guitar builder, and he made guitars for people like Ry Cooder, Jackson Browne, Graham Nash, Janis Ian. After years of studying the physics of acoustic instruments and pioneering advancements in pickups electronics, he developed the AEG1 guitar, which is the realization of everything he says he's learned about acoustic sound and amplification. His dual expertise as a luthier and a pickup designer allowed the LR Baggs company to craft a guitar and its electronics in harmony, finely tuning the system for this instrument. The AEG1 was recently reviewed in Premier Guitar, and it also, Lloyd Baggs wrote a feature, I think, what issue
recently,
was that?
Yep,
Yeah,
about
very
how
recently,
acoustic guitars work.
About how acoustic guitars work, that puts all this research, lifetime of research, into effect. I would say that, Chet Atkins never had an opportunity to meet an AEG1, but the idea of the thin body acoustic electric guitar has a lot to do with Chet Atkins, as we will get to in a little bit.
That's right.
Would you agree?
I would. So, an issue we've run into with a lot of the guitar players we've talked about in this podcast, Nick, is it's like, where do you start? The dude has, a 60-year career.
Yeah.
Right? But his style of playing, which you kind of alluded to there in the intro, like, has become an adjective onto itself.
Yes.
Like, people will ask for the Chet thing, right?
Yeah.
So in your mind,
you can just tap into it, right? You just do the Chet thing.
You just do the Chet thing, right? And there's a lot of other guitar players that have kind of crossed into that nomenclature when it comes to describing guitar parts. But when you think of a Chet Atkins thing, what comes to mind? What are the elements?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's like defining Like if I were going to make a Chet Atkins style version of something, the first thing I do, I look at the chords and I look at how the bass progression is going to work. That's the way I think about things. I don't think you have to do it that way, but I think about how the bass notes are going to work and where the melody is going to go with the bass notes. So a lot of root fifth, strong thumb, boom, 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 right? The snare part, the upbeats there. I don't put that in yet. Then I get the melody in there, and it's about how I can configure those two things to work together, and then think about passing chords, stuff like that, because Chet's a little jazzy, right? Like, and I think that is the important part. That's like an important part is like some cool chords in there, some cool jazzy chords, and it has to evolve. He doesn't play the same thing every time. Like every pass through a chorus or something it's an arrangement heavy concept.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the bass going, get a cool bass line that's like rooted in root and fifth playing. And then you get the melody up there, and then you're upbeating as much as you can to get the boom, chicka, boom, chicka, boom, right? But you get some arpeggios in there, you get the other fingers working. And basically by the end, you have this idea that all the fingers are kind of working at the same time. Now, I'm not a thumb pick guy, but I do always feel like that helps make an arrangement more Chet. That's not my go-to. I don't use a thumb pick, but when I do that, it like those bass notes really pop nicely. So, how about you?
So I'm going to take a different approach to this. Number one, you need a thumb pick.
Mm-hmm.
Number two,
so you say it's necessary.
I would.
The articulation really does the thing. Yeah.
I mean, there are some great fingerstyle players who don't use a thumb pick, but to get that real percussive low end, I think thumb pick is a big part of the sound. You're going to need some kind of semi-hollow guitar with a Bigsby.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we got
or
those
full
two
hollow.
Things. Sure. Yep.
Yeah. One of those. Not this Strat that's behind me.
No. But like, he played a Gretsch back in the day, had signature Gretsch. So imagine a Gretsch guitar with a Bigsby.
I mean, and let's just say, Country Gentleman, second to Les Paul as the biggest signature instrument.
That's a good question.
Right?
My heart tells me there has to be something else, but
like I think
right.
Les Paul, right? Like we all know that his name is Les Paul. But I think that you could get pretty deep into your guitar education before learning who Les Paul is, because his name is so associated with that instrument. I think a lot of people don't know that Chet Atkins is the Country Gentleman, right?
Yeah. Because Country Gentleman does sound like just a model of a guitar.
Right.
I know it was, but it's easy to not think that it was named that way after a real person.
Yeah.
But man, let me think a second. I'm thinking if there's anything on the Fender side that's close, but not. I mean, the thing is with Fender's side of things, the shape and look of the guitar was more iconic than anybody's singular name on it.
Yes.
Other than Leo's, of course.
And they didn't get into signature model stuff until
way later.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I feel, well, let us know. If we're missing something obvious, let us know. But we're going to say Country Gentleman number 2 on the list.
Oh, the Precision bass, named after John Precision.
Okay, that sounds like you're just making that up. I know that, but that literally, yeah, Johnny Precision. That's what we're going to name this thing.
How awesome would it be if the Precision bass turns out was actually a signature model instrument?
Right. Like if there's all of a sudden this guy named Jimmy Telecaster out there.
He comes out of the woodwork and he's like, "Hey guys, I want my money." Like, no way.
Royalty rate.
He would
okay, so you got the thumb pick, you got the
old.
Gretsch, some kind of just clean amp.
Mm-hmm.
Could be a deluxe,
clean and
could
warm.
be a twin, clean and warm amp, and maybe since Chet was a studio guy, maybe you could throw a little bit of slapback in there. Not like rockabilly yet, but just a little sprinkle. Just a little sprinkle there on top. And I think tonal wise, that'll get you there. But to your point, it's the style that he played that I think really gives it its sound. Because you could play that style on a Les Paul with P90s through a Gibson Falcon, and you know
Totally.
you're not out of the ballpark, but it's to me that style is so self-contained because when you think of like solo guitar players, I think of Joe Pass. You think a lot of them tended to either come out of the jazz and classical school,
Mhm.
and he had a bit of that influence because he was a well-versed musician during that era, but it's because to me the true elements of his style is the taking the Travis picking to another step, to another
Mhm.
level. It's the playing the cascading open strings
Mhm.
and the artificial harmonics.
Mhm.
Combine that with some 6 and 9 chords, like you said, a little jazzy. We're not doing, triad pairs and altered dominance over here, but just a little bit of those
A
non-tertiary
little
chord
jazz
tones.
elegance.
That's right. You got it. And an incredible interpreter of melody.
Mhm. Big melody first
Incredible.
kind of thing.
Incredible. Like all of the songs you probably recognize as being cornerstones of Chet's catalog. Yakety Yaks, Mr. Sandman. So I think those are kind of the basic elements of his style. Is supreme melody. That's what we're talking about, right?
I do want to point out one thing. We're both guilty of doing this. We just pigeonholed Chet to one specific era of his career that really only makes up part of his career, which is the jazzy electric era playing a Gretsch. And then there's all the nylon string stuff.
Oh, we'll get to that.
We didn't mention that. So then there's also that. So you could come at Chet's music completely differently. We're just in agreement about what we were both vibing to. But like I love the nylon string stuff too. It's just that's a whole different thing. That's a whole different sound and way to approach it. But all the stuff we just musically speaking, it's all the same angle.
And I think to me, I put Chet's kind of career stuff into 3 big buckets. One is like the quintessential, stuff you hear from the mid 60s, like what we talked about. Clean Gretsch, clean amp, thumb picking, playing Beatles tunes or playing, Enter Sandman. A lot of people don't know he played Mr. Sandman, Enter Sandman. Playing Enter Sandman. No, Mr. Sandman.
We can go on TikTok or Instagram and find the Chet style version of Enter Sandman.
Oh, that would be
pretty easily
incredible.
Right? Like, that's gotta be,
yeah.
Yeah.
And then so that's one bucket. Second bucket, I would say more of his later stuff that really focused a lot on nylon string. Also, the creator of one of my favorite signature models, the Gibson Chet Atkins Black acoustic.
It bothers me that you don't own one.
I know, dude. I know. And someday,
it bothers me that you I need you to own one of those.
Both there have been an abnormal amount of text between me and Corey Wong with reverb listings of you see this one? Nope, sunburst can't have. And there's that model exists in black only.
Oh,
no sunburst, no natural. No.
No, I don't like the sunburst, but I think the natural is cool. But the natural is, am I correct? This is a non-research point. The natural is just the nylon string one, and the black is solid string.
Steel string, I believe so.
What did I say?
Solid string.
Solid body.
Solid
They're
string.
both solid body. Steel string.
Steel string. So then the third bucket I would put in is his work as a producer. Because he did just as much to affect the sound of music, of popular music as a producer as he was a guitar player.
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
So that's where I go with the Chet stuff. Now, moving on to our next thing, coming out of Merle. What were your thoughts about that? He hears Merle Travis, in
I think
the
it's
late
easy.
30s. He hears Merle Travis in the late 30s. Like, to put a perspective on this.
Yeah.
The late 30s, he hears Merle Travis on the record. So you got to think, I just saw a clip of Chet playing on the Tonight Show, solo nylon. He's playing the claw. He's playing the claw. And you got to think that was 40 years after he heard Merle Travis on the radio.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah, I think like you can't talk about Chet's thing without talking about Merle, because it's like, Merle has a whole style of picking.
Yeah, which is this, right? Thumb and first finger is Merle.
When I perform that and when I've taught that, I don't think of it, yes, but I don't think of it as rooted in the actual fingers. I think of it as the shape, and I do thumb, middle, index, ring.
Okay.
Right? Like, like as a rolling thing.
Because I think,
but it's the same notes, but that's how Chet thumb, 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 right? And he's got those going.
yeah,
But
I
Merle
think Chet
was thumb and
expanded, Chet expanded how to use the fingers in that style. I think that was his big contribution.
And I think like you can hear Merle, and it's like a proto version of what Chet's doing, but it's so related and it's so tied that it's like one doesn't like that's why that style of picking, it's almost that's why that style of picking is so important to learn as a player, because of Chet. But it's like it comes not from Chet, and there are Merle Travis tunes that just sound like it might be hard to tell if it's Chet or Merle. But for me, the thing that is the difference is the jazziness of Chet's playing. Like it's a little bit more advanced, it's a little bit more refined. Like he's just like a tighter, he can sound tighter is not the right word. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's definitely not as loose as some of Merle's stuff. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, Chet is always like really controlled,
and it's more sophisticated, as we talked about.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. And then it's like a different. Yeah, it's just the next step with that sound. And then that's where he starts. That's where Chet starts with it, and then it goes from there. And he opens up to the open string stuff that you mentioned, and all that cascading stuff, and just keeps going and developing his language around that.
I do feel like the thumb pick is a lot like, for guitar players, the pedal steel in this regard. Is that a lot of guitar players I know, they start getting into it and they're like, I want to learn the pedal steel. So they buy a pedal steel. They realize it's hard as hell to learn how to play. You got to suck for a long time on that. And then just one day you wake up
forever.
And you're all right. Yeah. And that's what you work really, really hard to just be okay. Right. Yeah. I think the thumb pick is the same thing. Like at least 2 or 3 times in my life, I said, this is it. Next 6 months, every gig I play, I'm just playing it on a thumb pick. I'm just playing it on a thumb pick. And without fail, I'll get a week into it. I'm like, no, this just isn't. Because, I'll just go down a Brent Mason or a Chet Atkins rabbit hole. And I see, probably more so for me, Brent Mason. I'll just see that he can literally play anything with a thumb pick and just rotating the fingers. I'm like, yep, I can do that. I'm going to do that. I can do that. Nope, not a chance. Not a chance.
Yeah, I have gone through that. I'm laughing and smiling because I've gone through the exact same path.
And I blame it because the thumb pick was too tight.
Oh, dude.
Thumb pick, it hurt my thumb.
There's a lot of reasons. You can find all sorts of reasons to blame the thumb.
That's my favorite excuse. The thumb pick is too small. I couldn't really.
But you keep buying thumb picks and you find a problem with all of them.
Jeez, right?
Like there would be times when I was teaching lessons full time where I would do the same thing. Just teach every lesson with a thumb pick. Especially when I got into lap steel, I really wanted to just keep it on all the time, switching between instruments.
Because I feel like if you're going to dive deep into the thumb pick, you might just go full banjo. I mean, right?
Why not? So when did you what's your earliest vibe on Chet? Like where did his music first leave his mark on you?
100%. I can tell you. I can almost tell you the day. It was late 90s in the era of used CD stores.
Oh.
Right? There used to be a great one in my town. And anytime I'd get a little money from the job from working at Best Buy, I'd go over to UCD store. I'd trade in some old ones. They'd give me credit. And I'd been reading guitar magazines, of course, by this time, playing for a couple years. Knew the name, had a loose idea of that he was Chet was a country musician. But there is this, and I think it is streaming. There's this compilation, which I think Chet is one of the all-time great compilation artists because
Oh, sure.
his there's some just really great his output is over so many different facets and eras of his career that there is this one compilation, I believe it's called Mr. Guitar. Oh no, Guitar Legend, the RCA years. That's the one. And it came out in 2000, I guess, or remastered maybe in 2000. But it's a double disc, has lots of, Yesterday, Walk Don't Run, Windy and Warm, Yakety Yaks, Take 5, Mr. Sandman, Memphis Blues, a lot of his real like Jitterbug Waltz, hardcore early guitar hits.
Yeah.
And that to me, Chet Atkins, Guitar Legend, the RCA years, that to me is the best gateway into the biggest, most impactful part, I think, of his career. You drop that in and I could just listen to that all day long. It makes me, and again, a few times over the years, I've tried to really sat down and learn one of his arrangements. And it's tough. Classical guitar helped me out a lot when I studied that in college to get the more finger independence.
Mm-hmm.
That was a real, even though I never went on to really play classical guitar very well. It was just working on that helped me kind of, in a backwards way, get more into Chet, because once I had some more dexterity with my picking hand, when I went and revisited some of those Chet tunes and arrangements, I was able to glean more from them, even if it was just not so much learning the arrangement note for note, but learning and internalizing the finger patterns. Just, whatever the picking pattern was, and then applying that to whatever song or whatever, even if I'm not even playing a song, if I'm just playing like backup for something, you know what I mean? And so now there's like a handful of picking patterns that I use that I can get around with pretty well, that all of a sudden sound more way impressive than they are to play, than how difficult they are to play. So that is kind of a roundabout answer to is how that early Chet stuff helped me out. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I wouldn't be surprised if there was some metric that, some impossible metric of listening that you've done over the course of a lifetime. I would not be surprised if it is possible that Chet Atkins is the person I've heard the most in my life. Because from the ages of 16 to 25, I worked at a guitar store, and the owner, it was called Coils Richborough Music out in Bucks County, and the owner, Frank, loved Chet Atkins. Chet Atkins was his favorite guitar player. And, so this is like late 90s through mid 2000s, initially pre iPod era. He would just go on Napster or whatever, the current downloading thing of the day, had everything ripped to CDs. He just had a stack of remember MP3 mix CDs, right? Of those that would just play all day long. Like that was the sound of the guitar store. Sometimes somebody would say, can we put on something that's not Chet Atkins? Or if he wasn't in that day, somebody would put something else on. But for the most part, the soundtrack of those 9 years of my life working at that store were Chet Atkins. And it sort of like became this thing that's just in my ears. And the funny thing is, for me, is that I didn't I liked it. It was just like, I never listened to it on my own though, because it was such a ubiquitous part of like every day of working there. I didn't work there 40 hours a week, but I was there maybe 4 days a week. And it was all the nylon string stuff. So I didn't know about this other side of Chet's playing, the electric stuff, until way later, probably in my late 20s. I finally, like, you know, after not working there for a few years, got re-interested in hearing some Chet stuff, or, you know, was missing it. And then I started going through his catalog and, like, found all the electric stuff also. And yeah, it's so for me, like, there's this very nostalgic thing to working there, and this being the perfect guitar store soundtrack. But for me, I also feel like that is so in my ears. And you know, even though I didn't put my hands on a Chet arrangement in my late 20s or maybe even my early 30s, it's like I could just, it just felt so natural to me because I had heard so much of it. And to me, I think that, like, there's a big reason why that is a great way to approach the guitar. Like, teaching people, I would think about this stuff, and I think I've seen it click for people. Like, learning Chet arrangements provides, like, so many lessons.
Oh yeah.
Like, you can approach it super simply. You can approach it just with the chords and or even the bass notes in the melody, just to get that finger independence. You can get the chords in there. You could just learn a chorus of a Chet song, one pass through a section, and get enough out of there to just practice and get your right hand technique together. Learn a couple chords with your left hand, a couple cool fingering, stuff like that. You put it all together, there's so much information. It's so dense. There's harmony to learn, syncopation, like unbelievable syncopation. And that's the thing that, for me, like, learning classical guitar, when I took, I mean, I shouldn't even say I learned classical guitar. When I studied classical guitar for 1 year, you get that finger independence there, but it's not the same as, like, you go to Chet and then you get this syncopated thing.
Yeah.
But learning, what I've found is learning those arrangements, learning that there's lessons on just guitar fundamentals, harmony, rhythm, all that stuff. But there's also, you start to put together the history of the guitar and his influence,
Mm-hmm.
and it starts to make sense for other artists.
Yeah.
And that speaks to his like gigantic influence over the language of guitar music. To me, when I think of, there are a lot of places to go thinking about Chet's influence, and because this thing is so defined, I think sometimes it can be less obvious to pin down, because it's like, if you're not doing the thing necessarily. But man, I think that so many 60s British guitar players, this is not groundbreaking information I'm offering or anything, but like, you listen to the Beatles, George Harrison plays stuff, especially on the early records. This just straight up sounds like Chet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's in all those guys. We're checking that stuff out, and it's in there. And also playing Country Gentleman.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, another kind of little subsection of his career that I really like are all the different collaboration albums that he did. And he did a ton of them. Oh, side note, we're talking about late 90s Chet. He was the first guy I really consciously knew you use a looper.
Oh,
there was this record called Almost Alone. One of his last records.
Yeah. Cool record.
And there's a song in there called Jam Man. And
yep.
He uses the lexicon Jam Man.
Yeah.
And that inspired me. And it's this blue, pretty big blue pedal with 2 buttons on it. And that was like the first piece of gear that I was really influenced to like buy because of something.
Oh, you got one?
I got one. Oh yeah.
Nice.
I ended up selling it in college, but I ended up
I would have guessed you got into looping because of Trey's boomerang use.
No way, dude. Boomerangs were so expensive.
Yeah.
They're still expensive for what they do, really. I mean, I don't know. But no, a lexicon or Digitech. Maybe it was Digitech Jam Man. That's what it was, not a lexicon.
Yeah.
Right? Digitech Jam Man, blue pedal, looper pedal. And man, the first time I like just figured out a loop and it was able to like loop without hiccuping or whatever, I was like, all right, thank you, Chet. But it was like, it was a parallel to me because at the same time I was hearing Jim Hall use a Digitech Whammy the same era. Like all these old dudes were like getting into their pedal phase.
Yeah.
It was great. But yes, collaboration albums. He did quite a few of them.
Yes.
And
do you have a favorite?
I do probably, as I'm looking over the list here, I think Neck and Neck was really good with Mark Knopfler. I think my favorite ones are Neck and Neck and The Day Fingerpickers Took Over the World with Tommy.
Oh yeah.
But he got to make one with Merle Travis. He made a couple with Les Paul. Jerry Reed, Hank Snow.
The Jerry Reed stuff is ripping.
Yeah.
If you want blazing country guitar stuff, man, Chet and Jerry Reed. A friend actually sent me one of those recently. It was like, you know this? And I had listened to it before, but that was the first time I like really spent time with it. And man, that stuff is blazing.
It was great.
But my personal favorite, Chester and Lester Man, I think that is such a cool album. I think on the list of essential instrumental guitar albums, like that is on there for me. To me, like hearing just these two dudes like at kind of an interesting point in their career, like where they're established. It's not they're not making it at the height. They weren't making this album in 1958. When did Chester and Lester come out?
Came out 76.
76. It's the 70s. The album cover is so 70s looking. They're wearing their white suits. And and Les Paul had been retired. This brought Les Paul. This was like his return. They sound like future music from the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like what the 50s dreamed the 70s would be like, and it's like so it doesn't actually sound like what the 70s are. It sounds like what they would have imagined the 70s would have been 20 years earlier.
Right.
And it's like the tunes have this like saccharine sort of like, just this warm glow about them, but like there's like they're using phasers and stuff. They're using the technology of the day to play this old stuff. I think it's such a cool album, and if you've never checked it out, like anybody who's listening should check out Chester and Lester.
I would say one, although not billed as a collab album, a full-on collab album, has a lot of great guitar collaborations, is the Read My Licks record.
What's that? I don't
has
know that
George
one.
Benson, Eric Johnson, Mark Knopfler, Pat Bergeson all playing on it.
Mm-hmm.
That's great record. That's one of my favorites. And then the Stay Tuned record, which also has Benson, Knopfler, Steve Lukather, Earl Klugh, Larry Carlton, Brent Mason, Dean Parks, a lot of guitar players. All the cats. He just liked to surround himself with other guitar players and play, which I think led to him creating that CGP moniker.
That's right, certified guitar player.
Now, I believe there's 4 of them. There's Chet, Tommy, John Knowles, Steve Wariner, I think, is the list.
I think you are correct. I think that is the...
And I can't remember if Tommy or Steve told me this once, where it was like, somebody was asking them about it, like, what did it feel like to have, you're only one of 4? And he's like, there's only 4 because...
Oh, and Paul Yandel.
Oh, and Paul, who was his rhythm guitar player forever. Yes.
He got the certification.
And so I can't remember who it was, but they said there's only, 4 or 5 because Chet passed away. Otherwise, he would be just dishing them out left and right. Like, if had he lived another 10 years or whatever, there would have been he would have been just throwing out those CGP diplomas, all over the place. But yeah, those records, I think his later stuff is for a person whose career is this long, I think the last 10, 15 years of his career are really strong.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I think
really
you could
strong.
jump in anywhere in his career. Yeah, I wouldn't say that about many artists.
Right.
But Chet's somebody you could pop in to his discography at any point and you could get the Chet Atkins thing. You could hear him be himself.
Yeah. The 2 records that I haven't checked out as much as I want to is the Standard Brands, which is the record he did with Lenny Breau, and Reflections, which is the one he did with Doc Watson.
Yeah, I don't
those
know
two I
either of
need to
those.
check out. I need to check out more. But the one kind of great story I have about Chet, I was obviously far too young to see him live or see him play, but this was told to me by John Knowles. Is John Knowles was living in Nashville? I'm guessing probably early 70s. Chet, was in his record executive era at that time, and Lenny Bro had come to town, and so John was like, "Oh, Lenny, let me take you down to meet Chet." Okay, cool. Chet, you want to hear? I got this guy I want you to play. Okay, cool. So Lenny brings a guitar, and Lenny's playing a 7-string guitar, but instead of a low A, it's a high A. He's
Right.
fishing monofilament fishing line for him. And so Lenny pulls out his guitar and he plays some standard for Chet or whatever. And Chet's just like staring at his hands. And guitar is a very visual instrument. Like a lot of times if we see somebody play on TV, even on mute, you can recognize the shapes of the chords and probably even guess what key the song's in. So he plays through this standard, and Chet looked at him, and like, "Hey, what'd you think?" John. And Chet looks at him and goes, "Are you even in standard tuning?" Like he like Lenny was so incredible that even somebody as well versed in the fretboard as Chet Atkins wasn't quite figuring out what he was playing.
Yeah, I mean,
and I'm gonna see John this summer, and I want him to read because it's been a good 20 years since he's told me that story. I want him to retell that story to me to make sure I'm getting the details right.
Call in, tell the story.
I will. We'll call him. We'll have him call in and leave a voicemail. Cool. All right. I think we did it.
I think we covered Chet.
You can't go wrong, man.
Unless we do a podcast, we could do a whole podcast just Chet listening. It would go on for as long as this podcast will go on.
Probably.
It's a big discography.
Thanks again to LR Bags for sponsoring today's episode. Make sure to head over to lrbags.com. Check out the AEG1 guitar. Check out the review in Premier Guitar and the Align series pedals. Get your reverb, your comp, your EQ, your delay, your chorus, everything you need pedal-wise for your acoustic guitar.
And don't forget, you can get at us by sending us an email to 100guitarists@premierguitar.com, or you can text or leave a voicemail at 319-423-9734. While you're at it, we would love if you would like this video or rate and review this podcast. And of course, however you're checking it out, please subscribe.
There we go. All right, we'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.